Hi there, I'm Katie. I will be talking today about supporting the whole student and all of the things that come with that, and some of our inert biases and things we can do to overcome, making sure that we treat all of our students the exact same way, and so that all of our students can learn and can benefit. One of the unique aspects about elementary students' language development is, especially at the kindergarten and first grade level, which is the level that I work at. I'm a building sub at a K-1 building. Kids in kindergarten use a lot of blunt sentences. They use a lot of non-descriptive words. I need this. I want this. And as they go through kindergarten, they're learning more words. They're starting to use more descriptions. And then even in first grade, they're starting to use even more descriptive words. Many of the writing lessons that I have personally taught or seen taught get a lot into those descriptive words and trying to really communicate what you're trying to say. Like, I like dogs. Why do we like dogs? Do you like dogs because they're cute and fluffy? Do you like dogs because they run and you like to run with them? So in first grade, we're really kind of pushing that boundary. So that's kind of that unique aspect of that, because it happens really fast and people don't realize it until they see it. I actually have a friend that has a first grade student, and she's blown out of the water with how much she's learned and acquired this year. If you're talking about ELL students, or acquiring new language in general, whether you're an ELL student or not, if you have a hard time communicating what you want, you can get frustrated. I know specifically a lot of ELL students that struggle to fit in with their English speaking peers because they don't quite know how to communicate what they want with those friends. And so their social emotional development can struggle because of that, unless they have some other friends in a class that also speak the same language, which can happen and does happen, but not all the time. And then the first stage of language acquisition is students stay silent and they're taking in the new language because they're like kind of observing, because they don't really know what's being said. They aren't understanding it and are just absorbing. Right? And then the next stage is where they start to speak, kind of few words, but cognitively speaking, as they slowly learn the language, we're slowly adding more descriptive words and we're slowly asking them to understand and grasp what we want them to understand. I will say that one of the best ways to support your whole student, and this is something that I have written on my notes here, learn about your kids. Learn about them. There's a lot of teachers out there that don't take the time to sit and have a conversation with their students. And in kindergarten and first grade, it's hard. I used to teach high the middle school, so the only grade levels I haven't really gotten into is like second through like fifth grade. But all the other ones, I've got a decent amount of experience, and what a student will tell you in middle school is vastly different than what a student will tell you in kindergarten, first grade. Because kindergarten, first grade, they're blabbing. They're sharing all the information that's happening at home. They're telling you everything, okay? Middle school, they kind of shut down a little bit. So that's kind of like a little bit of the difference there. One of the things that I had written down is culture can really affect the development of a student. And there are so many different cultures, so many different ways to influence a student. We have students in our school that are Native American. We have students that are English speaking or that are from Africa. We have students that are from Mexico that speak Spanish. And then we have students in our community, because we're a Title IX school. We're, or Title I, excuse me, not Title IX, a Title I school. And our community is very impoverished, I would say. And if a family is struggling to even survive based on their, just trying to put food on the table, trying to keep the power on, all that stuff, their last priority is going to be school for their kid. And that's not always the case. But if your body physically is in fight or flight mode, I can't worry about anything except for where my next paycheck is going to come from. This child, unfortunately, is going to suffer because they won't have the readiness skills to start kindergarten. they are not going to, and you see this more in middle school, they're not going to prioritize education as much because mom and dad just don't. Oh, they don't care about school. We don't care about your grades. We don't care about that, because we are in fight or flight mode and just trying to put food on the table. And that's not to say that the parent does not care about the student. It does not mean that, but it does mean that the parent is focused on something more important. And it's hard to argue with a parent on that. Like, oh, you think that putting food in your kid is more important than them learning? I mean, yeah. Like, I can't blame them. So, I know I talked about that, and that in early adolescence especially, they can really shut down if they don't prioritize the education and prioritize schooling and at home. So that's kind of like that early adolescent phase. And then, like I said, especially prevalent like 4th to 8th grade is when they kind of start to shut down if they're not prioritizing education. Beforehand, what we worry about in elementary, like kindergarten through 3rd grade, what we worry about is the students' motivation to learn, number one, but also like communication with parents. Like, are you ready to learn? There's a lot of kids that come into kindergarten. Like, I knew my ABCs. I knew how to count to 10 before I came into kindergarten. There's a lot of kids that that's not the case. They don't have any prior learning experience at all. And that's crazy, to me, but that's how it is on a lot of different levels. So, let me see. Explanation of how socioeconomic status, including poverty, affects the development and learning of children in early adolescence. So one of the articles that I have quoted here states, socioeconomic status affects overall human functioning, including our physical and mental health. Low SES, socioeconomic status, and it correlates such as lower educational achievement, poverty, and poor health, and ultimately affecting our society. If a parent can't pay to put food on the table, are they going to pay to have a kid go to a dentist? Right? Our school has like a free dental clinic that kids can use, but not everywhere has that. Our school is pretty lucky in that aspect. It's something that's increasing with every passing year. We see it. The gap between the rich and the poor is ever growing. And it affects our society because our physical and mental health is low and can thereby affect learning. If your kid is worried about whether or not they're going to get food that day, do you think they're going to be concentrating on school? No. They won't. They don't. And, like I said, what I was talking about earlier, it's basic survival instincts, right? Put food on the table, power stays on. School is kind of not as big of a priority. And sometimes, and this is, something that I see every day, sometimes parents forget to parent. And it sucks because I don't necessarily believe that they're bad parents, but it's disheartening to see because it just breaks my heart because I have a lot of kids that are neglected because their parents are so worried about other things other than, their children and their education. And we see we see it. If you're a teacher, you see it. One way that students, we can support students facing economic disparities is get them signed up for those programs, right? Because my school is a Title I school, it's really nice and really helpful because they have free breakfast and free lunch. So that school is paying for your students for 2 meals a day. And then if you qualify, our school also does work with bringing or giving students food to take home to mom and dad to help keep food on the table. And on top of that, the Title I school also helps with reading readiness. Like there are students that did not get ready for reading before they got to school. And we have students that are in reading groups specifically for that to help them, just give them a little extra boost. So getting them involved into programs is super helpful. And even if it's not offered through your school, even if your school isn't a Title I school, I think it's really important to look around you and utilize those resources. There are people that volunteer to tutor, and all you need is time, which is also hard to get, but it's a much simpler solution than having to pay somebody to do it. And then, language acquisition, culture, socioeconomic status, we see that as teachers every single day. I mean, we see when a student is poor, we know. When a student doesn't speak English, we know. And we also see when a student has a culture that's a little bit different, because culture is such a wide and vast variety of, it could be a lot of different things, you know? So maybe the culture at home is that you don't care about your kids going to school. Maybe the culture at home is that you care so much that if a kid gets one thing wrong, or if a kid does one thing wrong, then they're going to get severely punished for it. So that's another side of things to look at as well. And on top of that, I mean, you know, we have biases, okay? We do. We avoid them, but we do have them. I can have a student that's in my mind. I have no bias against him, but I struggle because I know he's being neglected and abused. And just to be clear, yes, we've mandated, reported, all of that. However, he does not get baths. He has a speech impediment. He has a really hard time with school. And he also has a really hard time socially. So when we have a student that kind of hits all the cards for us, what can we do as teachers to help make sure, A, that student doesn't fall through the cracks, but B, don't spend so much time on that student that all of our other kids suffer as well. And it's hard. Every single classroom is different. Every single student that we encounter is different. So I think that, you know, when, you know, a student comes to class and they have the same clothes on as yesterday, like we know, we can tell that they might need a little help. So the best plan for, you know, how we can eliminate those biases is recognize your students' needs. Every single student. Know if they need extra math help. Do they need extra reading help? Do they need to learn how to hold a pencil the right way? There are all these different things that we can do. Make those notes and set aside time for the whole class to be working on all of these things. So A, somebody doesn't feel left out because they need extra help with something, and B, so that everybody is learning at the same time. Utilizing visuals, you know, when we teach kids with different languages, we have to be able to utilize those visuals. And even a student that is lower cognitively, like maybe it's a special needs student, or maybe it's a student that has FAS, we don't know. Something that some kids that are lower cognitively, this is something that we can talk to them about, and we have the ability to work with them. But if you care, if you know your students, you communicate with your parents, you communicate with your admin, you communicate with your special education teachers, we have the ability to impact a lot of these students. And I will also be honest, it's not possible to help every single student. And that might be a harsh way of looking at things, but I know from previous experiences that sometimes we can't help them all. And maybe that's because of home life. Maybe that's because of, you know, behavior issues. We cannot help them all. But what matters is that we try and treat every single student like they are brand new kids learning, and we are focused on really truly trying to help them, because that, you know, makes the most sense. And, you know, piggybacking off of that, you know, when we have diverse languages and cultures in the classroom, we can teach them. Like, a lot of teachers are like, I have heard from a teacher and they said, I can't teach this kid, he doesn't speak English. And I'm like, not true. So number one, especially at my grade level, use lots of visuals, right? I mean, you have to use lots of visuals, especially, I mean, even like I said, like you might have a kid that has autism in the class, does not speak, does not read. They need visuals too. Doesn't matter if they speak English or have a different culture or not. Visuals help. Visual learning is one of the most common methods of learning. Not always, but it is something that's like very, very common for students. Like, oh, I can look at that and I kind of know how to do it. And then also demonstrating what you want them to do is also super important. Second thing, if you have a student that's an English language learner, have translated copies of assignments, have translated copies of papers that you send home. And our school does that as well. If we have a Spanish speaking family, send them home the Spanish version. right? Or a family that speaks Somali or that speaks Cantonese. There's a lot of different, like, we have translation methods available for us to be able to do that so that parents and kids stay on the same page. And then finally, like, to learn about their culture, I mean, Monday morning, have them share what they did over the weekend. I had a kid the other day that said they went to their their cousin's quinceañera, right? The kids were like, what's that? And then they got to tell them that it's this huge party for a lot of Latino people at the age of 15. Girls usually, but like huge big deal, right? And they got to share that part of their culture, and that's not really important in, my culture. So it was really cool to learn about. So that's, talk to your kids, tell them to share stuff, and don't put them on the spot and say, hey, I need you to share about your culture. Don't do that. That would be very non-inclusive and not okay. But if you just get them to talk like a normal kid, because that's what they are, they're just kids, they would love to tell you about their weekend. It's awesome. And then local or global learning networks, finally, I mean, my favorite is Minnesota Ag in the Classroom. I was an ag teacher for 3 years. Maybe this makes me biased, but Minnesota Ag in the Classroom has a long list of different like community gardens that people can be a part of. And gardening does not really require you to speak English. It requires you to work with your hands and become a part of a community. And it doesn't matter what cultural background you're from, how much money you make, what language you speak, it doesn't matter. It matters that we're getting together and we're growing food, right? And that's something that everybody needs. So that's something, and our school has been thinking about doing a community garden as well. So that's super cool. And then globally, I mean, you could pick any country in the world, find an activity or a, maybe sometimes a traditional dress outfit or something. And, at my elementary young kids age, like you could say, hey, this is something that they would wear in blank country. Let's color it. Let's show you what it's supposed to look like. And that's one option. But there are also options out there that you can do. Like there's resources out there that have pen pals where you can have your whole class have a pen pal with another student from another country and then learn about what they're learning about. It's all about giving them the opportunities to have, these experiences. And that's just incredible and crazy. Ultimately, and I believe I answered all these questions, and I'm very sorry for this video going as long as it did, but, students they're kids. They want to be loved. And that's the most important thing. You as a teacher all of these kids want my love and they deserve my love. And if you have to put a little more love into some kids because they struggle with this, that, and the other thing, so be it. Because what matters the most is you teaching them the best way possible so that they can learn. It's not about you and your teaching methods. It's about how they are grasping it, how they are learning it. So thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a good day.